So breaking news, we are just getting some new reporting on Israel's assessment of the strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. This is crucial because the context here is, CNN learning, our Natasha Bertrand reporting on that early U.S. intelligence assessment, which found that the U.S. military strikes did not destroy Iran's nuclear program and likely only set it back for months. Jim Sciutto is out front in Washington with this new reporting. And Jim, in the context of the firestorm around this report from the Pentagon, what you're learning from Israeli intelligence is so crucial. What are you finding out?
A senior Israeli intelligence source tells me that Israel's own BDA, or bomb damage assessment, of the U.S. strike specifically on the Fordo underground nuclear facility mirrors that CNN is reporting from the Defense Intelligence Agency, and that is that the damage from those strikes was limited and perhaps even less extensive than believed initially. So the Israeli assessment matching the U.S. assessment as we were reporting. Now, both the U.S. and Israel continue to gather intelligence, and I've been told throughout that doing BDAs takes time, and it takes multiple sources, not just images from the sky, right, but also human intelligence, signals, intercepts, etc. I will say this, though, Aaron, I was told by this Israeli intelligence source that Israel's assessment is that the sum total of U.S. and Israeli strikes on those nuclear facilities set back Iran's nuclear program by 2 years. So going further than that U.S. assessment of perhaps setting it back months. The other point I would note is this, that I've been told in this context, but also repeatedly by Israeli officials, that if Iran attempts to reconstitute or rebuild these damaged facilities, Israel will certainly strike again. Of course, the question is, would the U.S. do the same?
Right, a real question. And also, Jim, I know that, these could be different analyses, but before the U.S. strikes, the Israeli government had already said, the prime minister had said that the Israeli strikes prior to Trump's strikes had set the nuclear program back 2 to 3 years. Yeah. So if what you're saying, if that would indicate, I suppose, in some way that the U.S. strike may not have really had much of an impact at all. Unclear. It's hard to connect those two, but it certainly raises that question. All right, this is huge, obviously hugely significant reporting from Jim Sciutto, and it matches what Natasha Bertrand is putting out here, Jim, from what you're learning.
One thing I will say as well, this source said to me, and this is not inconsistent with what you'll hear from U.S. intelligence officials, that BDAs are, in the words of this Israeli source, an art as opposed to a science, right, to some degree, right? And we should not be so surprised by the limited nature of the damage, because I've been told repeatedly for years that to completely destroy these sites, you would likely need multiple strikes. Even with the size of the weapons, these bunker busters that were used, multiple strikes, and also a ground component, right? Boots on the ground to assess, but also go into the areas that you couldn't reach from the air. And that was, I'm sure that was on the menu of options the president had, but given the danger, it was not one that he chose to take.
All right, Jim Sciutto, thank you so much. A significant new reporting there. Let's go to Scott Roker, nuclear expert, vice president of the Nuclear Threat Initiative, and retired Army General James Spider Marks, former commanding general of the Army Intelligence Center. So you, in that capacity, seen so many of these assessments. So, Scott, you hear the Israelis, the bomb damage assessment mirroring the reporting of the U.S. initial assessment from the Pentagon that the U.S. strikes would have possibly set the program back by months and did not obliterate it. Are you surprised by these findings and that the Israeli initial assessment seems to support it?
Yeah, these reports are definitely concerning, but I would say it's still too early to know whether these strikes were successful from a military standpoint. But I think it's important to take these reports in the context of what we heard from the vice president earlier this week, that the highly enriched uranium that Iran possesses was not addressed in this attack. And so all the reports that we're hearing are definitely concerning. And the highly enriched uranium is really important because that's the most difficult step in getting a nuclear weapon. And so the fact that that was not addressed in the attack is a big concern for me. But fundamentally, I don't think you can address this military or the Iranian nuclear program through military strikes. You can destroy equipment, but you can't take away that knowledge, that know-how. The Iranians have been working on nuclear issues for decades. It's multifaceted. It's a extensive program. So for me, the military solution never made sense from the start.
General, you spent your military career as an intelligence officer, so you've been part of these assessments. How do you see it?
Well, fundamentally, when you do intelligence, there's intelligence that you share. Now, clearly, we have an arrangement that we call the Five Eyes with that group of nations that we openly share essentially everything. And with the Israelis, we have routinely been in a sharing type environment. And specifically with this current circumstance, we've opened the door. Mm-hmm. So what you're seeing possibly is the Israeli assessment and the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency assessment, shared the same intel. And in many cases, those narratives within the body of that assessment might have been cut and pasted and moved from the Israeli assessment to the U.S. assessment. That doesn't concern me at all. Second point is we're conflating, not us. I mean, everybody in the administration is conflating a bunch of terms, and it drives military dudes nuts. What does obliterated mean? I don't know. That's a street term. I can obliterate a guy with a punch in the throat. I can destroy, but the military terms are you either destroy or you defeat or you delay. And if you destroy, it disappears. If you defeat it, it's probably going to come back. And if you delay it, you give yourself some time to figure out, they may resurrect themselves over a course of time, and then you get prepared for the next step. So those are two fundamental things I think we should be considering.
Right. So Scott, when I want to show again, these are the images, that anyone watching has seen in recent days, and we tried to understand them. The Fordow nuclear site, which was at the core of the U.S. strike, right? And it had been presented by some erroneously, but if Trump just decides to drop one of those mother of all bombs, it goes away. It was clear before that it was not that simple, and it's certainly clear now. You see the craters from the U.S. bombs there. They look very small from the satellite, but obviously that shows just how huge they are. Former UN nuclear weapons inspector David Albright, I know you know him, he used these and other images and some other information that he found to do his own assessment. He sent it to us. I just wanted to read part of what he said. He said, overall, Israel's and U.S. attacks have effectively destroyed Iran's centrifuge enrichment program. It will be a long time before Iran comes anywhere near the capability it had before the attack. That being said, there are residuals, such as stocks of 60%, 20%, and 35% enriched uranium, and the centrifuge is manufactured but not yet installed. Those non-destroyed parts pose a threat. It sounds as if he's focused on what you're focused on, which is what we don't know about the enriched uranium and their centrifuge backups.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think he's speaking mostly about, the Fordow and the Natanz, the two known enrichment facilities in Iran. But we lost a lot of visibility on the Iranian nuclear program when the U.S. left the JCPOA, the so-called Iran deal, in 2018. After that point, we lost track of where centrifuges are located, where highly enriched uranium is located as well. And so the fact that, these military strikes have just focused on the two known enrichment facilities, it doesn't address the entire problem. There are centrifuges that are still out there that we don't know where they're located. I mean, in fact, a couple of weeks ago, the Iranians said they had a third enrichment facility, which we haven't heard anything more about from the U.S. or the Israelis. And so this is really important because that's the machine you need to basically turn the 60% enriched uranium into weapons grade 90% enriched uranium.
We know, General, that Israelis have penetrated from a human intelligence perspective deeply into Iran. Do you think that means we will get real answers here?
Yes, I would think absolutely. That penetration, unless it's for some reason now been uncovered and those folks are at risk, I have no reason to believe that. It's been over the course of many, many years that's been in place. So this is phenomenal tradecraft. And I would think that those are the eyes on the target, potentially, that will give us much more clarity through the filter of the individual. But there's always that challenge. But having those eyes, that primary source is essential to a really clear and precise, more precise bomb damage assessment.